Amnesty International was created 50 years ago. We are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year as we speak. And it's actually, the spirit of Amnesty is all about ordinary people getting together to accomplish extraordinary things, extraordinary battles against injustice, against human rights violations. And when Peter Benenson, the lawyer who created Amnesty International, set it up 50 years ago, I don't think he ever imagined that 50 years later it's going to become the largest human rights movement in the world, with more than 3.2 million members and supporters, and growing. I think it's an amazing story, which one man's outrage resulting in a global movement for human rights. See, the power of Amnesty comes from three different sort of angles, because ultimately what we're trying to do is to create a fairer world with lesser violations, human rights violations. And the question is, how do you go about doing this? And the way in which Amnesty does it is, first and foremost, by actually bringing together high quality evidence of violations and of the perpetrators who are causing these violations. So, having a very strong analytical evidence base is very central to everything we do. And that's essentially the sort of, the survey result which came out just last week, which said that Amnesty is one of the most influential think tanks globally. And that's based on our reports, analysis, and our evidence. So I think we are certainly celebrating that, there's been an independent assessment, an independent testimonial to that effect. But the second part is what I mentioned earlier, that it's the people power. So it's the power of good argument and evidence coming together with the power of, millions of people standing behind this cause. I think that's really, it's an amazing, combination of these different powerful elements. Whenever we think of Peter Benenson, my mind also goes to what's happened in the last 12 months. It's incredible that in the 50th anniversary of Amnesty International, we have seen a veritable human rights revolution across the world. And we often think about the Middle East and North Africa when we think of what happened in the last 1 year, but actually it's happened far beyond. In fact, the Tunisian revolution has been called the Jasmine Revolution. And the Chinese government is now trying to find any word jasmine on the internet to try and curb the use of the word, which is impossible given that they're all drinking jasmine tea, the millions of people there. But I think the interesting parallel between Peter Benenson in 1961 and Mohamed Bouazizi, the vegetable vendor who set himself on fire in the small town called Sidi Bouzid in Tunisia. And that set Tunisia on fire, which set Egypt on fire, triggered a series of revolutions, was that human spirit for freedom. Because when Peter Benenson opened that newspaper 50 years ago, a London newspaper, and found that there were these two Portuguese students who were arrested for toasting to freedom in a Lisbon bar, many people read the same newspaper on that day, but not everybody acted on it. And that's the difference, because Peter said, I'm not going to sit down and take this. So he wrote an article in the same newspaper asking the ordinary readers and the public to say, let's take action. Let's write to the Salazar government saying that these people should be released. These students who were arrested should be released. And that's what Bouazizi said. I'm not going to just accept this. And that's what the millions of Egyptians said. We're not going to take this anymore. And that's the spirit of freedom. And freedom is interesting because when we talk about freedoms, broadly speaking, we say there are two types of freedoms. One is the freedom from hunger and want, and that's one part of freedom, because it's not just the freedom from repression and freedom of expression. It's equally the freedoms which are economic and social freedoms. And that's what we saw in the Arab Spring, because these people, Mohamed Bouazizi, the vegetable vendor, an unemployed graduate, he felt a loss of dignity on the one hand. He didn't have employment, he was actually an educated guy, but equally he didn't have a way in which he could express his voice. So it's that, the freedoms coming together is the story of Amnesty as well. If you again look back for the last 50 years, the history of Amnesty is quite closely intertwined with artists coming together to also add their voice for freedom. Whether it's the Human Rights Now concerts or the Secret Policeman's Ball, or individual artists. In fact, I met Youssou N'Dour, the Senegalese artist, recently, and he told me that he says, I'm part of Amnesty International. I've been working with you guys for a long time, and I keep meeting people like that who have given hours and days of their time to support the fight for human rights. So Amnesty, I think we are deeply privileged to have all these incredible artists who are, many of them are sort of major celebrities whose time is so precious that they give so generously. And I think today I think the idea of freedom and the idea of art are so closely interlinked anyway. So I think we are very honored, and I'd like to thank all of the people who gave their time and all of you who made this project happen, because Amnesty International, we have limited resources, so we rely on the time and effort that people voluntarily put in to projects like this. I think, of course, what we've also seen in the last 1 year as part of the revolutions, the human rights revolution, is that every human rights revolution has a song. Human rights is everybody's business, so nobody needs to even wait for Amnesty International to take action.